Well, I have a very unique childhood because I lived in 23 states by the time I was in 7th grade. My father surveyed land with a group of other 15 surveyors, and we would move every 3 months. He would back up the government truck, put our trailer hitch on it, and then we would go to the next small town. And the biggest house I ever lived in was 8 feet wide by 46 feet long. Each time we moved, my mom would take me to the public school and check me in. And she gave me a great bit of advice, which is basically, David, you're only one friend away from happiness. And that's true, because as soon as I made that friend, I was able to feel alive again in that community, alive in that school, and know that I had someone that I could be with, hang with, and have a good time with. When I lived in Kimmel, Nebraska, I had my first girlfriend. And I think I was probably in 4th grade. And I had a real crush on her. I didn't really want to leave her. And, I remember my dad took me to her house, and we went to a movie that night and, said goodbye. And I remember crying when I went home. I didn't want to lose that friend. But when you move, you have to realize that you got to go forward. And that's the same thing in life. You have these departures where something that you really like goes away. You got to find a way to fill it up with something else. I picked up the ability to make friends quickly. When you move around a lot, you gotta have that skill. And when you're in business, you go into all kinds of new situations where you might feel a little bit uncomfortable. I had that anxiety all the time. So I would always kind of check out the room, check out the landscape. And if I saw people who were uncomfortable, who looked like they were struggling to fit in, I always went out of my way to make them feel welcome and to make them feel appreciated. And then when I got into advertising, beginning to learn about advertising and customers, I realized I had to do the very same thing. And it wasn't something that was hard for me. It was something that was actually easy for me. And it was something I was really good at. I was the first person from the advertising agency business, the first person without an MBA to go into PepsiCo as a head of a marketing function. And then I was fortunate enough to become the president of KFC and Pizza Hut. And then PepsiCo decided to spin off the restaurants and to its own separate public company. And I was in the right place at the right time and then became the CEO of Yum Brands. So I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm having this round table. I bought everybody coffee and donuts, and I'm talking to people about merchandising. There are about 10 people there. And I said, tell me about merchandising. What's working, what's not working? And everybody started talking about this guy named Bob, who's sitting directly across the table from me. And said, Bob is the best merchandiser in our entire company. If you want to know about merchandising, talk to Bob. Another guy says, oh yeah, he taught me more in one day than I learned in my first 3 years when I went out with him on his route truck and we talked to customers and I saw what he did. But everybody started raving about Bob. And I looked at him and he was crying. And I said, Bob, why are you crying? People are heaping all this praise on you. He says, I've been in this company for 47 years. I'm retiring in 2 weeks, and I didn't know people felt this way about me. And that hit me in the gut. People want to know what your company's all about. People want to know what the CEO's office looks like. If you go into my office now, you will see my walls are completely covered of the people I've recognized all around the world. People said, well, what happens if you run out of wall space? I said, we'll put them up on the ceiling. And we put them up on the ceiling. So every time they'd come into my office, they would see what really matters, and it's people. And many times they would see their own picture because they knew that picture was in my office, and they bring their family up, and people would cry when they would see their picture in my office. That's the power of recognition. And it's the secret weapon for every leader. When I became the president of KFC, I always believed whenever I had a team, I wanted to find the person that everybody thought you should fire and fire him. I found that person very quickly. He was our CFO. He wanted to cut every cost you could possibly cut. He was wanting to take the color off the packaging, the bacon out of the beans. So I remember meeting with the chairman of PepsiCo, and I said, I love my team. There's one guy that's got to go. He says, what? This guy is really, really talented. Have you told him how you feel? And I said, no, I'm just going to fire his ass. and he said, David, you got to tell him how you feel. If you tell him how you feel, I guarantee you he'll adjust. So I went to Mr. X and I said, you know what? This is not working out. I think you're going to probably have to leave this company unless you change dramatically. And what I need you to do is focus on growth. Well, guess what happens? He became my number one partner. He became CEO of 2 companies afterwards. And we still laugh about it to this day. But I sized him up. I used all my skills that I got growing up, and I was 1,000% wrong. And that tells you one thing. You have to let people know what you're thinking. You can't keep it to yourself. You must not avoid conflict. You got to deal with conflict, and you need people to have the opportunity to grow and to get feedback. So I think feedback is a great gift. Success can be intoxicating. I learned it the hard way because I was starting to think that, I kind of knew better than everybody else. Crystal Pepsi was not the success that I thought it was going to be. It really hurt because I let myself down. I let the company down, and I met with the PepsiCo bottlers who had lots of experience. And they said, David, this is a great idea. You're right. It's a great idea. The problem is it doesn't taste enough like Pepsi. I didn't care what they had to say. I thought I had the biggest idea known to mankind, and I was a heat-seeking missile. And guess what happened? We launched it. Sales went through the roof. People didn't come back and buy it again. The reason was it didn't taste enough like Pepsi. And if I would have listened to them and taken the time to hear what they had to say and then understand whether this was really a problem or not, and if it was a problem, then fix it, I guarantee you we'd have come up with a better product. And that product would still be on the shelf today. So I went from exaltation to being a part of a big flop. This was a time when I thought, hey, I gotta follow my conviction. That's true. You have to follow your conviction, but you better make sure you're right. And the fact that we blew it, or I blew it with poor execution, kept us from having the success we could have had. And that's what kept me up at night. It still does today. If I lay there at night, I go, it could have been this. But I think I learned from it. And the most important thing, the organization learned from it. And, we became better because of it, but it was painful. You can win and lose. It's a lot more fun to win. You can never do enough. And it's the same is true in business. You can never work enough hours. There's always something more that you can do. So you have to find the right balance. I think it's very hard when you're coming up in business to have the right kind of balance, because especially if you're driven. And I'm a very competitive person, and so I wanted to win in everything. No one was ever going to outwork me. Once I decide to do something, I'm all in. I'm not a halfway kind of person. I went to work at 5 o'clock every day and stayed past everybody else because I wanted to win at work and I wanted to win at my career. And it was, I think, probably out of balance. I wasn't in as good a shape as I could have been. I wasn't as healthy as I could have been. Could have spent more time with my wife. In my latter years with my wife's health, I cried before she died, because the grief started early, just because she wasn't able to do all the things that I would like. And also, I had cancer. And so, I didn't know where that was really going to take me, but that was the year I retired as well. When people ask me, how could you leave something you love so much? You were so passionate about the culture and the team and, the business. I tell them this, and I can say it with 1,000% conviction. I didn't know I could love something so much and miss it so little. And why is that? I filled up my life with what gives me joy. When I left Yum Brands, I always tell everybody, I didn't retire, I refired. I learned that the most important thing you can do is understand what gives you joy and spend time on it. So one exercise I love is I start out by writing down everything that blocks my joy. And then I write down everything that gives me joy. And what I do is try to get rid of all those joy blockers and focus on the joy builders. So that's what I dedicated the rest of my life to, and that's where I spend my time on. That's the business part of my life.